Hey guys, this is Eric with Pixel Rookie, and this is the second episode of our Kenshi series following the story of Rook. In the first episode, you saw a preview of what's to come with Rook, and then we started back at the beginning of his journey. At the end of the first episode, he saved up enough cats to join the Shinobi Thieves Guild. This is where Rook really began his training. Rook anxiously entered the Thieves Guild tower. He knew there'd be a lot of opportunity in there. He soaked in the view of the ground level, and then he did what he thought any Shinobi thief would do. Go into stealth and start looting for treasure. It didn't take Rook long at all to realize this place was not a kind one to honest people. You had to break a few rules to survive. He successfully picked the lock on the nearby chest and found a small thieves backpack. This one was better suited for him since he didn't suffer penalties from wearing it. He equipped it and continued exploring the tower. Rook found a training area where he spent time honing his skills. He wanted to become strong and make a name for himself after all. He spent a full day training in the tower and decided it was time to leave and work on building his other skills. He grew bored of the long hours hacking at a training dummy. He was ready for other challenges. That's right, he spent more time mining until he had a full load of copper. He loaded everything into his bag and saw a way station on his map that was quite a ways away. He could sneak there with his load of copper, which would help him improve his stealth, strength, and athletic skills, despite it being an arduous journey. Rook began his travels there. He checked out the way station shop, but it didn't really have too much to offer him. Disappointed, he chose a different path. Rook had so many unexplored locations discovered from all the maps he looted that night in Squin, and he wanted to explore the entire world sometime to see all these places for himself. Looking over his map, he noticed a nearby city called Mongrel. He really didn't know about all the gray areas surrounding the city, but after reviewing the other locations on the map, he figured that'd be a good place to explore. He was traveling down the main road and crossed a Shek patrol. He kept his head down and continued on his way. He didn't want any trouble from the Shek. Rook didn't know much about the Shek other than they were fighters, and they definitely looked like strong warriors to him. That evening, he entered Vane. Rain cascaded down in sheets through the jungle. This almost felt refreshing to him after spending 10 days around the arid mountains where the hub is located. While traveling through Vane, he encountered a hive village. It was late at night and it looked like most of the villagers were sleeping, so Rook took this opportunity to, hone his skills. He picked the lock of a chest in a closed shop. Inside, he found skeleton armor repair kits and robotic components. He could tell that these were quite valuable, so he took as much as he could fit in his bag. He left some of his spare copper ore behind and took all the goods from the shop. Change of plans now. Rook could explore anytime he wanted to. For now, he was going to detour back to the hub so he could cash in on his new loot. Rook smiled to himself as he made his way. Things were looking up. He was thinking about what he could spend all of his cats on while sneaking out of Vane back into the border zone. He wasn't paying attention and snuck right into a group of hungry bandits that spotted him. Rook panicked and started to run. He was too slow though. He was weighed down by all the stolen loot he acquired. Well, he knew he either had to dump all of his gear and make a run for it, or he'd have to fight them. Rook was still too weak to fight off a group of bandits. He reluctantly dropped his stash and was light enough that he could outrun the bandits. He glanced at his map to remember where he left his treasure and made his way towards the hub. He came in through the rear entrance. The bandits were right behind him. He used the classic, run into the bar and let the guards deal with the bandits technique. It worked like a charm. The guards were outside dealing with the men and Rook decided to help once it was safe. This was a good way to build up his combat skills. The fighting was over before he knew it. Rook sold what little bit of the loot he was able to take with him. He grumbled as he thought of everything he had to abandon to stay safe. He needed to go back to find his remaining stash. He looked at his map and saw where he marked the remaining treasure and began making his way to it. He left out the back entrance again and made his way down the dry hill. It didn't take long until he found his pile of goods. Well, it sure is easy to find when you stack it perfectly into a little treasure tower. He gathered it all up and took off back towards the hub to sell the rest of his goods. It was risky to haul that much at once, and even riskier to leave it behind in the desert, but his gamble paid off this time. As he made his way into the bar, he saw that the slavers were already cleaning up what was left of the bandits and taking them in as slaves. Ooh, he really hated the slavers, taking advantage of the weak like that. He ignored them as he spoke to the barkeep and sold the rest of his loot. Well, he sold as much of it as he could. The shop ran out of money. There was another bar just north of the hub, so he went there to sell the rest of his goods. He passed the slavers again. He heard them conversing as he ran by, and he swore he heard mention of his friend and something about a huge bounty on his head. He thought that couldn't be right. There's no way his friend could have gotten himself in that kind of trouble. If any of that were true, Rook would try and find him and help rescue him. He couldn't worry about rumors and hearsay right now though. He got a tip from the barkeep that a group of dust bandits set up camp just south of the hub. He decided that he was going to check it out. He had to train his fighting skills if he ever wanted to get anywhere. There was a group of bandits camping nearby. As he approached, one of them noticed Rook and yelled at him. He told him not to run, so Rook decided to hear him out. Well, he threatened Rook if he wouldn't give up his money, and there was no way Rook was going to just hand over what he worked so hard to earn. From stealing. He laughed in the bandit's face and was immediately attacked. Rook took off running because this happened to make more of the bandits upset and they began chasing him too. As he got closer to the hub, the shinobi thieves' boss actually came out to Rook's aid. Only 2 of the bandits followed Rook that far, so he could easily fend them off with the help of his allies. Rook thought of how clever he was to join them and smiled to himself as he joined in the fighting. The first bandit fell without much of a fight. The men approached the other bandit and took him out immediately. Rook realized that he could fight these men off if he managed to isolate them into groups of 1 or 2 away from their camp. He approached them again and taunted the men. They got up and took chase after Rook. By the time he got back to the entrance of the hub, only 3 bandits were on his tail, but an entire army of shinobi thieves were there to back Rook up. The first 2 men were cut down like butter. The group surrounded the last bandit and took him out without any issues. Now Rook realized that while this was a good way to take out the bandits, he really needed to work on becoming a stronger fighter himself. Relying on the shinobi thieves to fight his fights wasn't helping him get much stronger. But Rook had an idea. He stripped down one of the bandits and began tending to all of his wounds. Once he finished healing the bandit, he picked him up and went to an isolated area north of the hub. On his way there, they passed a group of starving bandits that hadn't noticed them. Rook set his new friend down and used the darkness as his cover while practicing sneaking up on men and taking them out silently. He crept up behind the men and successfully knocked one out. His first victim was a success. Well, that wasn't until the rest of the men turned and saw what Rook did and began to chase him down. They were nearby the small bar outside of the hub. Rook ran there and let the men come to him. With the help of the guards at the bar, they easily fought the men off. Rook was able to get some free shots in on the wounded men while the guards did all the hard work. He healed up after the fight and went back out to get his his friend. Now, where'd he go? Okay then. Rook found a new friend in the group of unconscious bandits and picked up one of the men. He took him outside of the bar and stripped him of his clothes and weapon. Rook bandaged him up and set him in a bed to rest. Before his new friend could wake up and run away, Rook scooped him back up and went a little ways down from the bar. He laid the bandit down and waited for him to wake up. As the bandit began to come to, Rook immediately started punching him before he was even up on his feet. It was training time, baby. Rook's new friend was going to spar with him, whether he liked it or not. After fighting for a while, Rook knocked him out cold. Well, he wasn't just going to stand there and wait for him to wake up, so he dug through his gear and laid out his sleeping bag. He set it up and laid his training buddy down to rest up. He immediately got up to his feet and they began fighting again. The fighting continued. Rook was going to focus on martial arts combat first and then focus on other areas after he trained more. Anytime he knocked his friend out, he would patch him up and let him recover in his sleeping bag. After training martial arts for a few days straight, it was time for them to use blunt weapons and start over again. He gave one to each of them and they continued fighting. The bandit knew if he tried to run, Rook would just catch up to him and beat him down, but he had to at least try. He attempted to knock Rook out and make an escape. Unfortunately for him, that never happened. Hot Dog sparred with this bandit for 6 days straight until he decided he would let him go. He bought assassin's rags from the shinobi thieves to help his stealth skills, and Rook was already a much more formidable fighter. His first order of business, finishing off what he started with the Dust Bandits camp. Rook knew he still wasn't strong enough to take them all on at once, so he got the attention of a few men and lured them away from the camp. He managed to isolate one of them and began to attack. He was faster with his katana and was able to completely hold his own one-on-one. After a few more swift blows, the bandit fell. He made his way to the others. He took down another one with ease and approached the third bandit. He didn't stand much of a chance either. Rook went to a small shack in the hub to rest up after suffering a lot of wounds. He healed up and continued to pick off the dust bandits one by one until they were completely wiped out. He was becoming more confident and skilled with the sword. He encountered an entire group of starving bandits again. This time, he fought instead of running. Rook never fought this many men at once before. They were weak, but he had to be careful not to make any mistakes and get blindsided. He carefully parried incoming attacks and tried to whittle the bandits down one by one. One final swing, and the last bandit fell. Rook was slightly injured after the fighting was over, but he still stood while the rest were laying in the dirt. Though he felt stronger, he still had a long ways to go and he wanted to get even more powerful. He went back to the way station near Squin and he learned that there was a tribe of Shek warriors called the Band of Bones nearby. These fighters were much stronger than regular bandits. Rook decided he would try to lure them away from their camp one by one and take them out. For the most part, this worked quite well. Rook was able to slowly beat them down. These guys were tough though, and Rook had his fair share of defeats. When that happened, he would slowly get up and patch up his wounds. After that, he'd go back to the way station and pay a small fee to rest up in a bed until his wounds were healed. He eventually tricked the camp's leader to chase him to the way station where he had help taking her down. She was overwhelmed and no match for this group of men. She was beaten down in no time. Her name was Tora the Fearless, and Rook saw that she had a bounty on her head. Rook patched her up while she was unconscious and scooped her up over his shoulder. He wanted to cash in on his new prize. She was wanted by the Shek, and Squin was a short trip northeast from the way station. He ran all the way through the night until he saw the gates of Squin nearby as the sun was rising for a new dawn. When he approached the gates, the guards stopped him. They were just checking for smuggled goods. Rook didn't have anything incriminating on him, at the moment at least. They cleared him and he continued down the streets of Squin until he found the police station at the other side of the city. He showed his captive to the guard at the front desk and turned her in. Tora the Fearless was carried up the stairs to the second floor where she was bound and held captive. Rook stood there, 10,000 cats richer. He stood there counting his cats and thought he deserved to celebrate for collecting his first bounty. He went to the local weapon shop and spoke to the shopkeeper. Rook wanted to wield something bigger that hit harder. He bought a plank, which was considered a heavy weapon. He could see why.
That's quite big. Impressive.
It was 28 days into Rook's journey and he was starting to become a formidable fighter. It was time for him to start exploring the land and seeing what adventures he could find. And that's where we're going to end this episode. Now that Rook is trained to become stronger, where will he go next? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out more. Special shout out to my newest patrons, Legendmere, Glomus, and Bish. Really appreciate your support, guys. And a huge thanks to all my patrons who are generously helping support my channel to provide better content. I'm extremely grateful to all of you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.